Alexander's consciousness returned like a tide creeping across sand slow, inevitable, and accompanied by the dull throb of pain that meant he was still alive. His eyelids felt heavy, weighted down by exhaustion that went bone deep. The last thing he remembered was the explosion, the way his ship had torn apart around him, and Anna's scream cutting through the cum system. When his eyes finally opened, the world swam into focus gradually. The ceiling above him wasn't metal or plasteel. It was organic, rippling with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed like a heartbeat. The air smelled wrong, not bad, just alien. Sweet and mineral, like honey mixed with stone dust dot. Then he saw them. Two figures sat beside what he slowly realized was some kind of medical bed. Their forms were elegant and terrible all at once. The larger one clearly, the elder had skin that shimmered between deep purple and midnight blue, covered in intricate patterns that seemed to shift when he wasn't looking directly at them. 4 eyes, arranged in a diamond pattern on her face, regarded him with an intensity that should have been frightening. Crystalline formations grew from her shoulders like a crown, marking her as something important. Something royal. The smaller figure, presumably her daughter, shared similar features, but softer, less defined. Her skin was lighter, more violet than blue, and only 2 crystalline growths adorned her head. She couldn't have been more than a juvenile by their species' standards. Yet she watched him with the same penetrating gaze as her mother. Neither of them moved. Neither of them spoke. They simply sat there, silent guardians in the dim bioluminescent glow. Alexander tried to sit up, but his body protested violently. Pain lanced through his ribs, and he fell back with a grunt. The movement caused the younger alien to flinch slightly, but still, neither of them made a sound. Anna? His voice came out as a croak, damaged from smoke inhalation, or screaming, or both. Where's Anna? The queen, he was certain now that's what she was, tilted her head in a gesture that was almost human. Then she reached out with a hand that had too many fingers, each one ending in what looked like polished obsidian. She touched a panel that Alexander hadn't noticed, and the wall beside them shimmered into transparency. Through it, he could see another room. Anna lay in a similar bed, covered in the same organic-looking medical equipment. Her chest rose and fell steadily. Alive. She was alive. Alexander felt something break inside him, some dam of tension he'd been holding since the explosion. Tears burned at the corners of his eyes. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for saving her. Thank you for saving us both." The queen's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes softened. She made a gesture with her hand, elegant and incomprehensible, then reached into a container beside her. She pulled out something that looked like a fruit, translucent and glowing. Faintly from within, she offered it to him. Alexander stared at it, then at her. Every piece of his military training screamed warnings about consuming alien food, about unknown biochemistry and potential toxins. But those same instincts also told him that if she wanted him dead, he'd already be dead. He took it with shaking hands and bit into it. The taste exploded across his tongue, sweet and tart, and somehow savory all at once, like every good thing Earth had ever grown, distilled into one piece of fruit. Energy flooded through him almost immediately, warming his limbs and pushing back the pain. He ate it slowly, reverently, while the queen and her daughter watched. When he finished, he looked at them both and smiled. I loved it. For the first time, the daughter's expression changed. Something that might have been surprise flickered across her features. The queen made a sound, then a low, harmonic note that resonated in Alexander's chest. It could have been approval. It could have been amusement. He couldn't tell. Over the following days, the pattern continued. The queen and her daughter would sit beside him in silence. They would tend to his wounds with careful, gentle hands. They would bring him food and water, always silent, always watchful. Anna remained in the next room, recovering more slowly from injuries that Alexander learned had been far worse than his own. He began to learn their gestures, the subtle language of their movements, the way the queen's crystals would dim when she was worried, the way the daughter would lean forward slightly when she was curious. He started talking to them, telling them stories about Earth, about humanity, about the war that had brought him to this distant corner of space. They never responded with words, but he knew they listened. He could see it in their eyes, in the way they would pause and tilt their heads, in the small gestures that became familiar. On the seventh day, Anna woke up. Alexander heard her gasp through the transparent wall, saw her sit up in panic. The queen rose immediately, moving with fluid grace to the wall. She touched the panel, and the barrier dissolved entirely. "Alexander." Anna's voice cracked with emotion. "I'm here. We're safe. They saved us." Anna looked at the queen, at the daughter who had followed her mother into the room, and Alexander saw the same realization cross his friend's face that he'd experienced. These beings so alien and unknowable had chosen mercy when they could have chosen indifference. They had saved two humans who meant nothing to them, who belonged to a species they had never encountered before. The queen made her harmonic sound again, and this time the daughter joined her. It wasn't words, but Alexander understood it anyway. It was welcome. It was peace. It was the sound of a bridge being built between two species who had no reason to trust each other, but had chosen to anyway. He looked at Anna, saw tears streaming down her face, and felt his own eyes burning again. In a universe vast and cold and often cruel, they had found something unexpected. They had found kindness, and Alexander loved it.